that I need to do this. For Michigan School, we also have programming at Harvard Kennedy School, University of Washington, as well as, is there one? I'm missing one. Berkeley in California. I want to acknowledge a few folks in the room as well. We have our executive director with us, Esteban Delgado, who's not on camera at the moment, but I want to acknowledge his presence here, and Ross as well, you will have a chance to hear from later on, who will be participating in our Q&A, and of course, Antoinette. I am going to go ahead and introduce Antoinette very quickly and give her the mic so that you can hear from more exciting people. And Antoinette is the career for a foreign service officer, diplomat in the U.S. State Department with 19 years of service. She's served in a number of countries, including Australia, Brazil, Afghanistan, and Italy, and has studied Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. Very impressive. Antoinette joins the State Department after graduate school as a recipient of the Thomas Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship, and she has a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service from Georgetown University and a Master in Public Policy from Harvard University. She currently serves as a diplomat in residence for the Southwest region. Thank you so much, Antoinette, for being here. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to be a part of this session today. I'm so excited to connect with PPIA again, and I'll share in a bit sort of my connection to PPIA in the past and how I came to be a part of the JSI program. I'd also love to hear from you all in the chat before I get started in earnest as to, are y'all professionals, students? Are you interested more in career opportunities, internships, fellowships, study abroad scholarships? We have all of the above, but I'd like to focus probably the most time on what's most relevant to you all. And of course, we can have the Q&A at the end as well. But if you're able to put in the chat, I'm not sure if attendees are able, I think they have the ability to type in the chat. If you can type in the chat, just what your interests are. Are you professional? Are you a student? Are you interested in internships? Are you interested in careers? Just to give me a sense so I make sure that this is as relevant to you as possible. But I am, again, Antoinette Hurtado, Foreign Service Officer, which is one of the diplomatic careers that you can have at the U.S. Department of State. It will be 19 years of service this September, which I cannot even believe it has flown by, but it's truly been the adventure of a lifetime. Let me go ahead and start my, oh, it looks like the chat is disabled. I wonder if we are able to enable it, and if not, then maybe folks can just type in the
Q&A. Folks, you can just answer where you're actually typing. Chat is disabled. You can actually type there, as Justin did, who wrote, I'm an entry-level interested. So please feel free to go ahead and type your answers there.
Fantastic, and I'll keep a look in the Q&A too to see what folks are most interested in. Okay, some entry-level internships with funding. Well, we certainly have that. Actually, all of our internships but one are paid, and there are actually 2 internship opportunities open right now. So it's good timing that we're doing this. Okay, so I am with the U.S. Department of State, of course, which this crowd probably already knows is the foreign affairs arm of the U.S. federal government. So we are a federal government agency. Our agency's mission is to advance U.S. foreign policy overseas. We've been doing this since 1789. We're the oldest cabinet agency in the federal government. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C., of course, as all the federal government agencies are. But we do have, obviously, a global presence. We have almost 300 different posts around the world. And by posts, I mean embassies, consulates in many different countries. We do have some domestic facilities as well, mostly, of course, in Washington, D.C., where the headquarters is. But we have passport agencies and some field offices across the U.S., too. So if you're thinking about domestic roles in the civil service, we do have some of those opportunities, too. So again, we are the U.S. Department of State and focused on diplomacy, international affairs, advancing U.S. interests overseas. Now, who is this person talking to you today? So again, I am a Foreign Service Officer going on 20 years. As my colleague mentioned, I've served in Australia, Brazil, Afghanistan, Italy, some Washington, D.C. assignments. And I'm serving right now in a role called a diplomat in residence. So as you probably would have guessed, in the Foreign Service as a diplomat, you heard me saying that I've been in different posts and assignments, you're changing assignments every couple of years. That's the nature of the work in the Foreign Service, which is our term for our diplomatic corps. Those of us like myself who are living and working at embassies and consulates overseas. So my current assignment in the Foreign Service is as a diplomat in residence. What is that? Basically, there are 17 of us nationwide who are diplomats in residence. All of us are seasoned Foreign Service professionals. We've been diplomats for some time. And essentially our role is the regional recruiter. So we all cover different areas. I have a colleague who covers Texas, a colleague who covers Florida, DC metro area, et cetera. So my region is the Southwest, which is Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. I'd love to see in the chat, especially if you happen to be from my region. I will keep an eye on that for a moment as well. And just where was there a comment you wanted to make?
No, I'm so sorry. We just lost your first few seconds there, Antoinette.
Oh, no. Okay.
Just that last part, yes.
Okay. So I will put after the presentation, I will put a link in the chat of how you can find your diplomat in residence so that you can connect with them. So you just see it's a map on our careers.state.gov website, and you pick the state that you're in, and it'll tell you who your diplomat in residence is. And there's actually a button, that you can click to email them directly. So for those of you in one of my 3 states, that button will take you to dir southwest@state.gov, and that is I check that email every day. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn or any of the other diplomats in residence, you can. We actually just launched professional diplomat in residence LinkedIn pages. So don't Google my name because that will go to my personal one that doesn't have any State Department information. But if you were to put in diplomat in residence Southwest in LinkedIn, or just go to the handle there, dir-southwest, then that's where you can find me. And that's where I put real-time updates about opportunities. So jobs opening up, internships opening up, fellowships opening up, et cetera. Now, my connection to PPIA is that I actually joined the State Department through one of our fellowship programs. We actually have 4 career pipeline fellowship programs that are basically paying for the student's education, in most cases a 2-year graduate degree. And then you get to have a guaranteed job as a diplomat when you graduate. And so back when I was in undergrad, there was only 1 fellowship, and that was the Pickering Fellowship. Now we have 4, which is wonderful. And these 4 programs are part of a suite of diversity recruitment programs as well to make sure that we are representing all of America in this work that we do. So you do have to have demonstrated financial need for graduate school, since we're giving you a lot of money. So that's a part of the application. But as a Pickering Fellow, the State Department paid for my graduate degree from Harvard, and then I became a Foreign Service officer as soon as I graduated. And there were some paid internships that were part of it. And also part of that experience at the time for the undergraduate version of the fellowship that existed back then was to participate in a JSI. And so I did that in Ann Arbor, Michigan at UMich, and I spent my summer doing the JSI in, 2001, something like that. But had an incredible experience. I've been a PPIA alum and fan since then. So that's a little bit about me. Now, maybe we'll come back to this. Make sure that there's time a little bit later on, but I like to show them in sessions to give a real flavor of the kind of work that we do and the kind of experience that it can be being a diplomat, if that's something that interests you. You are traveling the world, you are learning different languages.
Antoinette, I think we lost you again with volume.
Oh, no.
Oh, perfect. You're back.
Okay. Please just keep stopping me in case that happens. I'm sorry, it's the first time that's happened recently, so maybe the internet is a little unstable this morning. We have been having some storms, as I know is happening a lot across the US right now. So basically, you get to meet lots of different interesting people, go to amazing places, and work on really important issues. And I can give the background of these slides maybe a little bit later in Q&A. Okay, so before I start to talk about the careers, and then after careers, I'll move into our student program opportunities, I do want to say a few words about why the U.S. Department of State. Of course, if you're joining this webinar already, you have some interest in international affairs or some interest in the State Department, but I'll give you a couple more. So, of course, probably the number one reason, certainly it was for me, and it is for a number of my colleagues, the sense of purpose, the sense of service, the sense of doing good in the world is a huge reason why we join. When I was in college, I did not know that I was going to be a diplomat, even though I was at Georgetown in the School of Foreign Service. I still didn't know that that was going to be my path. But what I did know starting college were two things. The first thing I knew is that I always wanted, I should say, I never wanted my job to just be a job. I always wanted my job to be an extension of my own personal values, and I wanted my job to be a way that I was going to be able to give back to the world. I needed my job to give me that sense of fulfillment and that sense of purpose and service. And so, I was looking for an opportunity that was going to allow me to make a positive difference in the world, right? I wanted it to matter that I go to work every day. I want there to be a positive result for the world and for people that I go to work every day. I want my life to matter. And so that sense of purpose and service, again, was really paramount for me. The second thing that I knew going into college was I want to travel the world. I had no money to do that. Growing up, my family did not travel internationally at all. And I didn't know anyone even who traveled internationally. But history was my favorite subject in high school. I saw the pictures of all these amazing places where these historical moments had happened over time. And I wanted to go and see it for myself. But I had no money, so I was going to need someone to pay for that. So how I heard about the State Department was actually a recruiter came to my college campus, much like I'm coming to you all today, talked about the State Department, and it started checking those boxes, that work of doing good in the world. Our mission statement is literally world peace, right? Prosperity, human rights, democracy, rule of law for all. And then started mentioning, the recruiter talked about this career as a diplomat. You're learning different languages, you're traveling, going to different countries, having different portfolios. I was someone who always got bored easily. And so for me, this is perfect. I like change. I like evolving my skills. I like always having something new to do every couple of years. And so that was also kind of a check box. And then the recruiter said, by the way, we have this fellowship that will pay for your graduate degree and also give you a guaranteed job as a diplomat when you graduate. So then it was just check, check, check in and checked all the things I was looking for. And I applied for the Pickering Fellowship and won it. So that was incredible. We do also invest a lot in training. So some people think you have to have a foreign language before joining us. That is not the case. We will teach you whatever language in the Foreign Service as a diplomat. We will teach you whatever language you need to know for wherever it is you're going. So I came into the department with Spanish, but the department taught me Portuguese before I went to Brazil. They taught me Italian before I went to Italy. So we invest heavily in training, not only in the languages, but also leadership and management training and professional skills training for whatever career you join as. Now, there are also a lot of tangible financial benefits to this career. If some of you are wondering the bottom line, what's the compensation package? Well, it's not just the salary, which is competitive, but in addition to, on top of your salary, there are any number of ways where you can earn thousands of dollars a month in benefits or additional cash money. So let me start to talk about a couple of those. The most significant financial benefit for me personally has been that if you are interested in the Foreign Service, you join the Foreign Service, when you're serving overseas, your housing is free. It is paid for by the US Department of State. So imagine not having to pay rent or mortgage for years and how much you can save up. So that's been really great in just creating financial stability for myself, which I did not have growing up. So it's nice to have that as an adult. Of course, we have a student loan repayment program. That's pretty par for the course these days. Also, some people think, well, can you have a family in the State Department? Of course, and we have many families in the State Department, and many of them stay overseas because of the free housing and also because of this next benefit. So if you have K through 12 age children, when you're in the Foreign Service, you either have them when you join or you have them during the course of your career, we will pay for your kids' private education overseas. Private K through 12 education, which is another thousands of dollars a month, is something that we will pay for. So that's huge. I don't know the age of the folks joining us today, maybe pension and retirement. Maybe these are words you haven't thought about yet, given much consideration to. I promise you there will come a day in your career where you are very much focused on this and you'll want to have financial stability in retirement. And we have a very generous pension that includes not only the pension, but also healthcare for the rest of your life after retirement, which is nothing to sneeze at given the cost of healthcare here. And then also, depending on where you serve, there are any number of ways that you can get additional money. If you serve at a hardship location, I mentioned I served in Afghanistan. I served there for a year. While I was there, I was basically making double my salary. And not that you have to go to, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, you will never have to go to a war zone like that. That was 100% my choice. And so we are different in the military in that sense in terms of how the assignments process goes. But should you want to go to a place where, life is a bit more challenging, then you can earn additional money that way. You can also earn additional money if you speak a certain language at a high enough level. You can also earn additional money if you're in a really expensive post like a Tokyo or London. We have a cost of living adjustment. So lots of things. I only just put a couple on the slide, but lots of other benefits that come into play when you're thinking about the compensation package for our careers. So let's start to get into the careers. I have not asked yet what is the professional and academic background of folks on the call, but what I do want to emphasize there is that you do not have to be an IR major or a poli-sci major. Of course, we have those and we welcome those, but we are hiring for all kinds of roles, for all kinds of professional experience and academic experience. So I always tell students and professionals, whatever your major was, we have a career for you. At the department. We're hiring IT professionals, we're hiring engineers, we're hiring law enforcement folks, we hire doctors, we hire psychiatrists, office managers, facility managers, all kinds of different roles. So that's important to know as well. But let me briefly say what the main opportunities are, careers-wise. So you've heard me say this term foreign service. This is what we call our diplomatic corps. Again, people like myself who are living and working at embassies and consulates overseas, advancing foreign policy through a number of different programs and activities. In the Foreign Service, there are two paths that you can take career-wise. You can be a Foreign Service Officer Generalist, and that's what I am, an FSO as we call it. As a Foreign Service Officer Generalist, you're going to work on a number of issues across your career. So you don't have to have a certain kind of background. You can come to us in this career with any degree. I did have kind of a traditional IR degree, but I have an FSO colleague who's actually also a diplomat in residence for Southern California. She majored in chemistry for her bachelor's degree. So you can truly come to us with any degree to be a Foreign Service officer. Now, while the Foreign Service officers are generalist, you are asked to choose one of those 5 career tracks that you see on the slide there. I do public diplomacy, which is everything kind of public facing that we do to engage foreign audiences about America and American foreign policy, but we also have the other career tracks as well. And if there's time later, I can go into exactly what those 5 do. So Foreign Service officer is one path. You can also choose the path of a Foreign Service specialist. And also, I will just say as a note, apply to everything for which you are eligible. And this is what I tell the candidates who reach out to me as well. If you are sort of interested in the Foreign Service officer one, but maybe there are a couple of Foreign Service specialist careers that you're also eligible for and you're also interested in, apply for everything for which you're eligible and see how it all shakes out. We have multiple, stoves in the fire, I forget the expression, eggs in the basket. So Foreign Service specialist is another path that you can take. Now, as that term specialist suggests, these are going to be careers where we are looking for people to have a certain kind of degree and or a certain kind of professional experience, or after we train them, they will be specialized. And so for Foreign Service specialists, let me go ahead and show you some examples. These are just kind of the categories, but there are 18 or 19 careers that you can look at for a Foreign Service specialist. Under administration, we have financial management folks, human resources, operations, logistics management. We hire construction engineers, facility managers, IT professionals, English language teachers, doctors, psychiatrists, lab technicians, social workers. We hire office managers. We have our own law enforcement arm called the Diplomatic Security Service. There are 4 careers under that. You can be a special agent and become a federal law enforcement officer with us. You can be a security engineering officer. You can be a technician. You can be a diplomatic courier. So lots of different careers under here, and each of them have different requirements. For some of them, for example, the special agent career, you just have to have a bachelor's, and it can be in anything. For the office manager role, you don't technically have to have a bachelor's. You could have an associate's or a bachelor's, and it can be in anything. So the eligibility, you just have to look and see which ones you're interested in, and then see if you are eligible. For some of our STEM careers, like the construction engineering role, you do have to have a degree in engineering. But for some of the other ones, you do not have to have a specialty already. There is also the civil service. So if you're interested in advancing this mission of foreign policy, but you want to stay domestic, you want to live in the US, then we have opportunities there as well. Most of these civil service jobs are going to be in Washington, D.C., because again, that's where our headquarters is. But we do have in those field offices and passport agencies across the US, civil service positions as well. Now, a note on civil service. All of our civil service positions are going to be on And that is how you apply. Oh, I was trying to go back to another slide. So with the civil service, you will want to register. You'd have to set up an account on usajobs.gov. For those of you who've been interested in federal government employment, you're probably very familiar with usajobs.gov. I know it can be a little bit difficult, and I'm sorry for that. But usajobs.gov is where you will start your profile and you'll set up your search parameters for the kinds of jobs that you're interested in, and then you apply for them on usajobs.gov as you see them. We also have another job called the Consular Fellows Program that is actually only for those who have fluency in the 4 languages that you see on that screen. Now, the Consular Fellows Program is an overseas role. You would be doing 2 assignments overseas. It's called a non-career, it's called a program rather than a career, because you can only do it for a maximum of 5 years, which is typically then 2 assignments overseas, and you would be focused strictly on consular work. So for this program, you also do not have to have a bachelor's degree. You would just describe whatever professional experience you have so far, but the fluency, the language fluency is key. And then I'll talk about student programs in a bit. So there's Foreign Service Officer Generalists, Foreign Service Specialists, our domestic colleagues in the Civil Service, Consular Fellows Program. And if there are specific questions on sort of how you start the application for all of those, we can certainly talk about that. But let me go ahead and move forward. Oh, here was the civil service that I was looking for. This is just, again, a reminder that it's all on usajobs.gov. These are the 11 categories or skill code categories, if you're at all familiar with federal government, that we hire for. But of course, those don't represent the jobs themselves. There are dozens of actual jobs that are going to be under each of these categories. So again, just to give you a feeling, we're hiring for all sorts of backgrounds, contracts, budget, IT, lawyers, public affairs folks, policy analysts, all sorts of things. So that's the civil service. Now, if there are veterans on the call and there are questions about how we provide support for our veterans, I'm happy to go into that. What I'll just say now is that about 20% of our workforce actually are veterans. So a lot of service members continue their public service with us at the Department of State. We also have veterans preference for all of our careers, both foreign service and civil service. But let me go ahead and start the part that maybe takes a little bit longer to go through because there are so many. We have tons of student opportunities. So if you are a student now wanting to get experience, or even you're a recent graduate looking to come back and maybe get that master's or get whatever other advanced degree, then this could all be of interest to you. So I won't go into detail on everything on the slide. I'll just sort of hit the key major programs. But you'll see 3 buckets here. So our student program opportunities are essentially in 3 buckets. The internships, all but one of which are paid, I'm very happy and proud about that, our fellowships and our study abroad opportunities. Let me start with a note about our fellowships. Where you see the first 4 bullet points under fellowships, these are all career pipeline foreign service fellowships. What does this mean? This means that with these 4 fellowships, we are going to pay for 2 years of your education, typically a 2-year master's degree. We're going to give you 2 paid summer internships. The first internship will be domestic in Washington, D.C. The second internship will be overseas at a U.S. embassy or consulate. We're going to give you an orientation program, professional development. You'll be assigned a mentor. And then when you graduate, you will have a job as a diplomat when you graduate. That's guaranteed. So those are huge things: money for grad school and then a job once you graduate, right? Are 2 things students are often wondering how they're going to swing. So this is huge. Now, for these 4 fellowships, where they differ is what you need to be studying and then what career you would join as. So let me quickly cover that now, and then I'll go back to the internships. So our oldest fellowships are the Pickering and the Wrangell. The Pickering is the one that I received way back in the day when it was just the Pickering, but again, now we have these 4, which is great. So the Pickering and the Wrangell fellowships, for these 2 fellowships, you would apply your senior year, or if you're a recent graduate and you want to go back to get your master's degree, you would apply the year before you would start your master's degree. Now, for everything where we're giving you money, and by that I mean our fellowships as well as our paid internships, we do require a 3.2 minimum cumulative GPA. I should also back up to highlight something you see in the bottom right of each of my slides, which is that all of our opportunities do require U.S. citizenship. I do sometimes get that question from international students and students in other status, so I just want to be clear about that. So with the fellowships, with the Pickering and Wrangell, you would be receiving tuition assistance for a 2-year master's program in pretty much anything. Technically, the master's degree, as you can see in the bullet points, has to be related to the Foreign Service, but the work that we do in the Foreign Service is so vast and varied that really that's almost any major. And the career that you would join as is as a Foreign Service Officer Generalist. So what I am, that's what you would become. The Pickering and the Wrangell fellowships always open over the summer, typically around July. You would apply sometime by the end of September. Last year, the deadlines were the 21st and the 28th for the Pickering and the Wrangell, respectively. So these will open up over the summer. So again, you would apply this summer/fall if you are going to be a senior then, or if you're a professional and you are going to go back for that master's and you also want to have the job as a diplomat when you graduate. Now, as I mentioned, these are part of a suite of diversity recruitment programs. An absolute requirement is that you have to show some sort of demonstrated need for graduate school tuition assistance. That will actually be one of the essays that you write. There will be one essay that's on your statement of interest, your sort of general, why should we select you? And then there will be another statement you have to write on your financial need and what that looks like. And we are also very much especially encouraging those who are from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds to apply. So first generation, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, what have you, disabilities, whatever. We know that diversity can manifest itself in many ways. Those are who are particularly encouraging to apply for these. So that's the Pickering and the Wrangell, our oldest fellowship. Now, then we have the IT fellowship. So if we have any IT students, IT professionals here who might want to come back for additional education and then a career, this could be of interest for you. Now, this fellowship is unique in 2 ways. Number one, it's our only fellowship where there's a very specific kind of degree. So you have to be a student pursuing an IT-related degree. Now, for our purposes, IT can be quite broad. It can be computer science, cybersecurity, anything really systems, network, computer engineering, systems network administration, management, anything like that for our purposes qualifies as IT. The second way in which this fellowship is unique is that it is our only fellowship that will either pay for the last 2 years of undergrad or a 2-year master's degree, whereas the other 3 will pay for the 2-year master's degree only. So when this opens up, if you are a sophomore looking to get the junior and senior year paid for and then have a career with us when you graduate, you can apply. Or when this opens up, you could also be a senior or again, a professional or recent graduate who wants to come back and get that master's degree. Now, the third way in which this is unique is that the career that you will have when you join the State Department is as one of those Foreign Service Specialist careers. Basically an IT professional in our diplomatic corps, managing our classified and unclassified networks. And the name for that is an Information Management Specialist. This fellowship also opens sort of late summer, early fall, typically around September, and will close early in the spring. These were the dates you see on the slide were the dates from this last fellowship season. Now, our most recent, our newest fellowship opportunity is the Clark Diplomatic Security Fellowship. This is another fellowship that will pay for a 2-year master's degree. But the career that you would join as is one of those Foreign Service Specialist careers again. We have our own law enforcement arm. You remember I said that earlier. One of the careers that you can have is as a special agent in our law enforcement arm. So as the Diplomatic Security Special Agent, so federal law enforcement officer. So if you are interested in that role, then this would be a great opportunity. Because federal law enforcement officers have additional eligibility restrictions, you will see some of that present here in the eligibility. So yes, you have to have a 3.2 and be a US citizen, but you also will have to be able to pass a physical readiness test. And then you also have to be less than 31. It's actually, it was 32 years old, but we just recently switched to have this be open in the spring versus the fall. So technically, and I need to update this slide, you have to be younger than 31 because federal law enforcement officers, you have to join by 37. Now, if you are a veteran, there is wiggle room there and you can have a waiver for that. But otherwise, for everyone else, you do have to join as the career before 37. So then working backwards, you have to apply for the fellowship in time to make sure you would join before your 37th birthday. Now, this used to be open in the fall as well. Just recently, we changed this. So this is actually going to open February 12th for application. And so who would be eligible to apply during this application cycle would actually be juniors rather than seniors. Or people who are going to be starting a master's degree in fall 2025. So again, professionals, recent graduates. So that's the fourth fellowship option that we have. So that's a note on fellowships. Let me go back to internships because I saw that there were a number of questions on that. And let me also just check the Q&A too to see if there's anything in particular. Okay, so let's move on with internships. I'm going to focus on the first 4 internships as those are sort of our most well-known internship programs and probably most applicable to folks on the call. So let's go ahead and start with the student internship program. This is our flagship internship program. It's the program through which most students have interned with us over the years. It was always unpaid in the past until 2022. We got some funding from Congress to turn this into a paid internship, and that's really great news, and we're happy about that. So what is this opportunity? The student internship program is a full-time, in-person, semester-long internship. Now, when I say full-time, I mean 40 hours a week, so you aren't also studying, but most colleges and universities have a way to give academic credit for internships or experiential learning programs, things like that. So you just need to be in touch with your college or university if you want to pursue that. So it's full-time. It's in person, with most placements being at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., but sometimes there's the opportunity to do this internship overseas at a U.S. embassy or consulate, which is always fun. And you would just note your preference in the application itself. And then it's semester long. So we actually offer this program in the spring, in the summer, in the fall. You can apply to any of the semesters where you'd be interested in doing the internship. Now, let's look at the eligibility for this one for a moment. Again, because this is a paid program, the 3.2 GPA is required. Also for this program, you have to be a junior or above, and when I say above, I mean any advanced degree, PhD candidate, master's student, what have you. So junior or above at the time of the internship, meaning you can apply as a sophomore so long as at the time of the internship semester, where you're looking to do the internship, you will be a junior. Now let's talk about the money, and then we'll talk about the application timeline. So what do we give you for the money? Of course, an hourly wage, that's standard for a paid internship. But more importantly, and on top of that, we provide housing for wherever you do the internship. So that's thousands of dollars you don't have to worry about. If you're doing the internship in Washington, D.C. or overseas, we provide you housing at no cost. We also pay for your flight to D.C. or wherever else it is you do the internship, and then your commuting costs as well. Now, all of our paid internships are in person, meaning you're accessing our facilities, you're accessing our email systems, so you're going to need a security clearance for that. With the US federal government, it's probably not a surprise. Probably also not a surprise that that doesn't happen very quickly, right? This is not a 2 or 3 week kind of process. This is a months-long process. And so when you look in the red box for the application timelines, we are always going to open this way in advance to give students that time to hopefully successfully get that clearance before they start the internship program. Now, one of the things that I will put in the chat after I finish the presentation, the first one will be how you can find your diplomat in residence to reach out to them and ask any questions. The second will be a link where you can sign up in our talent network. Tell us what you're interested in, which kind of careers, or are you interested in internships and fellowships, so that you get an email as these opportunities open up. As you can see, we currently have fall 2024 open right now, and it's only open for a week. And some of our other paid internships are only open for a week. So you only find out about it if you get that direct email in your inbox. So with the security clearance, that means we start the application timeline early. So summer 2024, that opened in the fall. Fall 2024 is the next opportunity, and that is open right now. It will close tomorrow. For the industrious folks, you can still pull together an application overnight. It's not super long. You do have to write just a couple of short essays, but no letter of recommendation is required. And then every couple of months, the next semester will open up. So fall 2024 is open right now. We'll close on February 9th. And then sometime over the summer, typically June, spring 2025 will open. And then, in the fall, summer 2025 will open, and so on and so on. And all of our internships are for all majors because there's an opportunity to do work on all kinds of policy issues. Let me go next to our second internship that is also for both undergrads and grads. So the one I just talked about, being undergrad or grad. This one, you can be an undergrad or grad as well. The Virtual Student Federal Service internship is our only unpaid internship, but it's also our most flexible internship. And for those who can't pick up and move somewhere to do an in-person internship, excuse me, whether it's because of family obligations, you're working full-time, you're working part-time, you've got a heavy course load, and you can't take a break in your studies, then this can be a really excellent option as well. And this is also open right now for application. So This is our only unpaid internship, but very flexible. What are the flexibilities? Number one, obviously it's virtual. You can do it from wherever you are. So again, you don't have to pick up and move anywhere. You don't have to take a break from your studies. You can continue with your work and your studies. So that's great. Then look at eligibility. You can be any year in school, which is not the case for our other internships. All of our other internships that are paid have a restriction on year in school. This one does not. Actually, you can even be a current high school senior who's going to be a college freshman, and you can apply. So you can apply from high school senior to PhD candidate and everything in between. And we do have everything in between in terms of those who apply for our internships. You can also be in full-time or part-time student status. And you also see under eligibility, there's no minimum GPA required here. So if there was a difficult semester or two, that's no problem here. Now, because it's virtual, there's no security clearance required, which means the application timeline moves along much more quickly, and you don't have to deal with the paperwork to submit to get the security investigation. This virtual internship is the whole academic year, meaning the fall and the spring semester. But another flexibility is that it's part-time, so it's a maximum of 10 hours a week. So again, it's a wonderful way to get experience, put something on your resume, see if this could be the career for you, but a little bit on your own terms, right? A little bit more flexible. Another thing I liked about this is that it's project-based. So with the paid internships, you're in person, you're assigned to an office, you're going to help that office with their work. This is a bit different. With this one, State Department employees, both those at embassies and consulates and those domestic, will submit projects for which they need intern assistance. I submitted a project last year and actually have a live project right now that I submitted if you want to help me do recruitment in the Southwest. But there are projects on everything: policy analysis, translation, if you have a language, social media, helping to promote opportunities for foreign students to study in the US. Everything, whatever your interest is, I promise you, in the 500 projects that are online right now that are currently active for application, you will find something that you are interested in. And you apply for up to your top 5 projects. And so in that sense, you already know what you're going to be getting into for the internship. Because I know sometimes with internships, we wonder as students, what exactly are they going to have me do? What am I actually going to be working on day to day? And you already know that here because all the projects are listed. The exact description of what you will be doing in the project is listed there. So this is open right now for application. It will close at the end of the month. Since we're in a leap year, that's February 29th. Then applications will be reviewed in March and April, and final selections will be made no later than March, and you would start the internship in September. Now, let me quickly cover the next 2 internships, which are only for undergraduates. The first, only for undergrads, is the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program. This is a deep dive, and I say that for 2 reasons. Number one, it's 2 paid consecutive summer internships with us, where the first internship will be domestic in DC. The second one will be overseas at a U.S. embassy or consulate. So you're getting both experiences, which is great. The second reason that I say this is a deep dive is because there's a strong professional development component here. So you're getting assigned a mentor, you have networking opportunities, and in between those 2 summer internships, you are taking what's called the Foreign Service Officer Test. This is a written exam that's the first step to becoming what I am as a Foreign Service Officer. So you're already getting familiarity with that career application process. In the best case scenario, you are passing and you're moving on to the next step, which is the interview. And then if you pass that, you get the security clearance and all that. Maybe you've got a job offer, waiting for you when you graduate. Even if you don't pass the test, you are familiar with it now, right? You've taken it and you know how to improve your study for next time if you do want to pursue it down the line. Now, this internship is fully paid in the same way that that first paid internship is: housing, flight, hourly wage. And so the 3.2 GPA is at play. Now, this is only for undergrads, and we are having a certain eligibility here so that you can get the 2 internships done before you graduate. So that means you would have to be a sophomore or a junior at the time of application. This always opens in August, typically the 3rd week in August for application. It's only going to be open for 1 week. You can see on the slide in bold what the dates were for 2023. It will be something similar for 2024. So if you are going to be a sophomore or a junior in fall 2024, then you could be eligible for this. Now, this has both a merit and a needs-based component, so we are certainly encouraging those from underrepresented groups to apply for this as well. Then the next internship, which actually is not an internship at all, it is a summer program, a summer experience, is the Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program. This is, as I like to call it, a 6-week international affairs boot camp in Washington, D.C. This is only for undergrads, so you have to be sophomore or above at the time of application. It is fully paid, so the 3.2 GPA is required. What is it? I say it's an IR boot camp because you're learning three things about international affairs. Number one, what are the current international affairs issues? We know there are some of them going on. Of course, there are many at any given time. The next thing is what are some careers that you can have in international affairs? Of course, you'll hear from representatives from the State Department, but maybe you also hear from Peace Corps or USAID or CIA or World Bank or whoever else they bring in as guest speakers that summer. The third thing you're learning about is what are some graduate degree programs in international affairs, and what are some fellowships out there that will help pay for those programs, including our fellowships that I mentioned earlier. This is fully covered, the tuition, the travel, the housing, everything. In addition to that, these scholars last year received $3,300 as a stipend for just food, additional living expenses in DC. I always joke with students, I did not have $3,000 to pay for food for my entire four-year undergraduate career, actually to include the 2-year master's. So for 6 years as a student, I did not have $3,000 to pay for food, but these scholars get it for 6 weeks, which is great. And that's just to say, again, money should not be a concern for this program. Now, this program just closed earlier this week. These are the dates from 2023. It will open around October 2024 for those who want to apply next year, and we'll have a similar deadline. Let me now go on to, actually, because some of you may be in DC, let me speak a moment on the Pathways program. These are internships or jobs for if you're interested in civil service careers, domestic careers. For the Pathways programs, you can be a current student or you can be a recent graduate. These are going to be on usajobs.gov, and really you do need to be signed up with us or have that search alert in usajobs.gov on point. Because they will come out like at midnight, and then they will often have a cap of 50 applicants or 100 applicants. So really, I suggest you register with us and note that you're interested in Pathways to get an email about this or set up strong alerts in usajobs.gov. These Pathways programs are going to be in Washington, D.C. So if you have the ability to travel there, or if you're already living there, then this could be something for you. Now, sometimes there are Pathways internships available at our passport agencies. So if you live near a passport agency, in my region, there's the Tucson passport agency, but many across the US, then there will also be Pathways internships for that. For the next, let me say a quick word on study abroad. We have 3 study abroad programs. The Boren is actually a Department of Defense program, but it's also a great program, and many of them go on to have careers with us, so I mentioned them. But our 3 study abroad programs are the Gilman, the Critical Language, and of course the Fulbright, which has very strong name recognition. Let me start with the Gilman. This is only for undergraduate students, associates, or bachelor students. And basically the eligibility is that you be an American student who is receiving Title IV federal financial aid, basically meaning Pell Grants. So if you're a Pell Grant recipient undergrad, then you're eligible to apply. This award is $5,000 to do a study abroad or an internship abroad. So you can put that money towards a program that you find or create yourself. Now, for the eligibility, for the deadline for this is kind of rolling. It will always have a deadline in March, and then it will have a deadline in October, depending on the semester in which you're looking to do the study abroad. So just go to their website and check it out. The Gilman is open right now for application. The deadline is March 7th, again, depending on what semester you want to do the internship. So just check out the website and see what all that entails. But it's open right now and will close for the spring session. It will close on March 7th. The Gilman has a subset called the Gilman-McCain that is the same award of $5,000, the same eligibility where you have to be a Pell Grant recipient, but also if in addition to being a Pell Grant recipient, you are a dependent, child, or spouse of an active duty service member, then you could apply for that opportunity. Now, if you are interested in language study, we have the Critical Language Scholarship. This is a summer immersion overseas in one of about 15 languages that we deem as critical for national security purposes. So you're not going to see Romance languages on here, really. Portuguese is the only one. You're going to see things like Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, etc. So you check out the website, and each year there might be a change or two in which language, but it's about 15 critical languages. So it's a summer immersion program in one of those languages. Some of them require previous study, but most of them do not. And again, you would just confirm that on the website. There is also a or I shouldn't say a subset, but a virtual version of the Critical Language Scholarship, which was launched during the pandemic, and we've kept it. It's called CLS Spark. And so if you want to do virtual, language with us. Then that is just for Arabic, Chinese, or Russian. And you do kind of cultural events online, you do some coursework online. And both of these will have the same application timeline. They will open in the fall. They will both also typically close around mid-November. And then, of course, we have the Fulbright program, which has many different kinds of programs. Fulbright can be for foreign students and foreign professionals, academics, and then also the other way with American students going overseas. So the one that I typically talk to students about in any case, but if you're also faculty, then there's a different program for that. But the Fulbright U.S. student program is for students, either those who are seniors or who already have their bachelor's degree, to do study overseas, research overseas, or teach English overseas. And so that's another great opportunity. Again, if you are in my region, my 3 states of Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, you can reach out to me. But otherwise, what I'm about to do is put a couple of links in the chat to help talk about where you can find additional resources. So this first link that I'm going to put in the chat, find residence. This is a link where you can go and you'll see a map and just click on the state that you're in, and it will show you which diplomat in residence covers your region. Then there, under their picture, is a little email me button, and you just email them, and that goes directly to our inboxes. So if you have questions following this, find your diplomat in residence and connect with them. What I'm also going to share next is a link to register with me /us. History of your interest. Again, a lot of these opportunities, particularly with student programs, are only open for a very short period of time. So if you are at all interested, especially in the internships and fellowships, you would mark that as one of your areas of interest so that you get these emails when these opportunities open up. So that's the doscareers.yellowgov email, or sorry, link that I just put in the chat right now. It'll ask you what you're interested in on the career side, if you're also interested in internships and fellowships, where you're from, so we know the state. So as diplomats in residence, we can also reach out to you. But it should be very brief, basically your name, your email, what you're interested in. So that is another thing that I absolutely recommend. So that is a lot of information because we have a lot of opportunities. And so everyone, whenever I do an information session, is always like, oh my gosh, I had no idea there were so many careers and then so many student programs and that we're hiring, for all majors. So I will pause there and see what kinds of questions that we have. And so how did you want to do questions? I see there's a hand raised, but also some things in the Q&A.
Yeah, I would actually love to use this opportunity to invite Ross also to join us. And we're just going to move to our Q&A session. We have a very live sort of after your presentation, Antoinette, we just got just like I see like 30 things in my Q&A right now. So I think what I'll do first is I'll quickly sort of introduce Ross, and then I think we can move into sort of a larger Q&A conversation to close out our session for today. And so full name is Rosalind Zephyros, but Ross prefer Ross. And is a seasoned nonprofit operations expert with over 15 years of experience in global and local social impact organizations. She is the founder and principal consultant of Europa Consulting, a human-centered advisory firm for nonprofits. Her passion lies in optimizing back office operations to empower organizations to scale their work, amplify their fundraising efforts, and broaden their impact. With a background encompassing finance, fundraising, and operations, Ross is excited to establish efficient structures with nonprofits. And we actually, the PPIA organization works with Europa Consulting, and Ross also happens to be a PPIA alumna. And so there are full circle moments here, but I'll let you introduce yourself a bit to our audience, Ross, and then we can invite Antoinette, who I think left to give you some stage presence, and then to our full Q&A.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I was a Foreign Service officer. I also am an alumna of the PPIA program. I am a Pickering, or I was a Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship recipient as well. And then I also was a Fulbright Scholar. I spent a year in Morocco studying tourism and its effect on traditional culture. So I have been the a beneficiary of many of the State Department programs that Antoinette highlighted. And I can definitely say that I have, where I am right now is 100% of the work that I was able to do with the State Department. And so I'm happy to talk about any of those programs. And then also my ultimate decision to stay in the US and leave the foreign service, but I still very much am working very closely in policy, international development, and economic development here in the US.
Wonderful. Antoinette, if you could join us back, because I think what we'll do in the Q&A, I think both you and Ross can answer some of these questions. I think there are folks, a lot of folks interested in career opportunities. But let me begin with this question here that says, what are the opportunities if you don't meet the financial need requirements? I think most students might have these types of questions for you after your presentation, Antoinette. I don't know if you want to take that first.
Sure. If you're talking about for the fellowships, then if you don't need money, if you already are able to pay for grad school, then just go to grad school and then just apply for the career. Absolutely. And so if you want to apply to be a foreign service officer, just go through the regular application process once you're finished with your graduate degree.
I think this is for the both of you. We have a question that asks, are there opportunities for someone in the mid-40s for mid-career?
Absolutely. As a foreign service officer, you just have to be 20 years old to apply, 21 when you take the oath and join. But for the foreign service in general, so foreign service officer or specialist, there is an age limitation, but it's way after the 40s. We actually have in the foreign service congressionally mandated retirement at 65. So you have to join by like your 59 and a half birthday. So you've got some time. So for the foreign service, we have that maximum because of Congress. But with the civil service, there is no maximum. And with the Consular Fellows Program, there's also no maximum.
And I would also advocate for the Fulbright program. Fulbright Scholars, there are many programs on the Fulbright website that are actually designed for mid-career professionals, not just scholars, not just, students with a PhD, but also just individuals in their mid-career. So Fulbright is another great opportunity.
And let's maybe pivot this to a level of to some conversation a bit. Could you, both you and Ross, Antoinette, share with us what your favorite part of foreign service? I think Antoinette, for you it is, and Ross, for you was.
Being paid to learn foreign languages, honestly. Like that was my favorite thing. I've been a language learner my whole life, but being able to be taught Spanish as a job was spectacular.
Yes, that is a huge benefit. I mentioned the State Department taught me Portuguese before I went to Brazil. They taught me Italian before I went to Italy. And for both times, for 6 months, I was paid my full salary to immerse myself in a language, which is incredible. I don't know any other job that pays you your full-time salary and that has you do as your full-time job language studies. So that's incredible. For me, it's really what I've loved about it and what has kept me in now for 20 years, which I can't even believe. Hopefully I don't even look old enough to have been anywhere for 20 years professionally. It does fly by. But it's really those two things that I mentioned that I was interested in going into grad school, for my career. One is that sense of purpose. I know with every single assignment that I've had, wherever, whether it was domestic assignment or overseas assignment, that I've made a positive difference in the world, whether helping some, individuals, some Americans through a difficult situation overseas, or working on the biggest policy issues. I know that what I've done has mattered and made a difference. That's huge. And again, I think not a lot of jobs give you that sense, of impact and of reward. And then the travel. I mean, the places that I've been and not just for where I've served, Australia, Brazil, Afghanistan, Italy, but for all the places that I traveled from there. When I was in Afghanistan, I took a personal trip to the Maldives. I did a safari in the Serengeti in Tanzania. I mean, I've traveled the world, and my little Chicana first generation college student self back in the day could never have imagined that this would be my life and that I would have seen so much and experienced so much. I feel like, it's not only the adventure of the lifetime, it's been the adventure of 5 lifetimes. I'm not trying to go like anytime soon, but let's say, for whatever reason, I was no longer, on this earth for much longer. I would have no regrets and I would feel like I had a full life. You know, I'm in my 40s now. But that's also incredible, right? To know that you've lived this life to the fullest, you know, suck the marrow out of life, as I think it was Thoreau that said. And I've had that experience 100%. So those two things I think are what were and continue to be the most rewarding and the most special for me.
I think there's a question here that would interest a lot of folks. I think it speaks a little bit both to your trajectories, but there's a question about your journeys, telling us about your journeys to where you are now, and if you could talk a little bit about a day in the life of the work that you both do.
Um, That's hard, I feel like, because in the Foreign Service, and this is one of the things I like, there's never the same day. And depending on what career you're doing, it's different. Depending on which country you're in, it's different. Depending on what career track you're in, what portfolio you have in that country, it's different. Depending on what crises are popping off worldwide on any given day, you know, it's also different. So I can't really say what a day in the life is. It's all something different and new and interesting, which I've enjoyed. But my journey was, you know, sort of as I mentioned when I was first talking about, you know, how I joined the State Department. It was through the Pickering Fellowship program, which was life changing for me. But I certainly didn't. I wasn't on the path to becoming a diplomat before that. I didn't come out of the womb thinking, okay, I'm going to spend the next 20 years preparing to be an American diplomat. Not by any means. I mean, I was born and raised in Southern California. I'm Chicana, Mexican American. Came from a single parent household. My mom raised the three of us, and actually all three of us ended up becoming first generation college students, which I'm very proud of. But you know, none of this was a given. There was nothing modeled in my community that had anything to do with the State Department or international relations or international travel. This was something I kind of came to because of, you know, those reasons I mentioned, those things that I was interested in, but I didn't really know how to. Well, I didn't know what existed out there as an opportunity to do those things that I was interested in. So it wasn't linear at all. So don't feel like you have to, again, have been on this path since birth. You absolutely do not. And even, you know, while you're in it, you can change and you can evolve and you can make it work for you. So that's just a little bit additional about my path.
Likewise, I didn't even really know that a diplomat was a career that I could be, to be quite honest. I had a vision of, you know, men in suits around mahogany tables that I think a lot of people do. I went to school for my undergraduate was in mathematics and economics. So I was very interested in international economics, international development, and research. I was convinced that I was going to get my PhD and do just a ton of research. I ended up going to a Black Student Leadership Conference in undergrad and was at a similar panel, but like this, but live, and found out all about the Foreign Service and found out about the Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship, applied, and kind of the rest was history. Throughout that time, though, I then learned about all these other really amazing opportunities that I could take advantage of as well to, again, learn more about the world. I'm really interested, as I mentioned, in learning languages and learning more about different experiences. So that's when I found out about PPIA, and that's when I found out about the Fulbright. So these are all absolutely wonderful programs. And like I said, I am who I am today. And I do the work that I do because of all of that foundational learning that I had.
We have a question in the chat that's a bit specific, but I think it could be helpful to hear from our diplomat in residence who just happens to be with us. A question around, do you know whether there's an alternative avenue to navigate and similarly circumvent the Foreign Service exam requirement and proceed onto their interview assessment, like with the Pickering Rangel Fellowships?
So the Foreign Service Officer Test is an important part of the application process to becoming a Foreign Service Officer. Now, with some programs like the fellowships, the application process for the fellowship is as rigorous, and I would say if not more so, more rigorous than the FSOT itself. And so the fellows have to still take the FSOT. Let's be clear about that, and, because sometimes people think they don't have to take the FSOT. That's not true. They still have to take the FSOT. They just do not have to pass it. Though, let me be clear about that too. The FSOT is no longer pass-fail. It used to be, but in 2022 that changed. And so everyone who takes the FSOT, this written exam, Foreign Service Officer test to become a Foreign Service Officer, you will move on to the next phase, which is called the Qualifications Evaluation Panel. But you can go to careers.state.gov and look up all about that. So the fellowships, because of the rigorous application process, you have to not only do essays and write things, you have to also do an interview panel as part of the fellowship application process. It's really quite rigorous. So that is why they do not have to pass the FSOT, because it has been determined that their application process itself alone is the equivalent of the FSOT. Another program actually that just launched that was a requirement from Congress. Let me actually find the link right now because there may be a number of questions on it and I want to be able to give you a resource. One moment. There is what we just launched, and actually I think still open to February 10th. And again, this is a congressionally mandated program. Sorry, just give me a second to put this link in the chat. Something called the Lateral Entry Pilot Program, which is just that, a pilot, to see how do we bring professionals in certain skill areas. It's only in 7 skill areas. So mid-level professionals with a deep experience in one of these 7 critical skills areas into the Foreign Service. Now, you can go to that link and read all about it. And you can, on the right-hand side, there's a link to each of the 7 critical areas and the vacancy announcement, which means it's the job posting. That's what we call a job posting in the federal government. It's called a vacancy announcement. You can see the vacancy announcement for all 5-7 if your skills are aligning with one of those 7 critical areas, and you can just apply directly on usajobs.gov for those. Because it is a mid-career pilot program right now, again, we're just kind of testing this all out. But the folks who apply for this do not have to take the FSOT. Their application materials will be rigorous. You've got to explain how you have this deep, I mean, talking like master's degree, bachelor's degree, at least 10, 12, 15 years of experience in a specialized area. Then your application materials will be comprehensive. If you will go through a review, everyone's materials will go through a review similar to the normal FSO application process. If you are deemed to have sufficient experience and sufficient application materials to move on to the officer assessment, which is the FSOA, the Foreign Service Officer Assessment, that's that all-day interview in Washington, D.C., then you will receive an invitation to that. So it's a similar entry program, just minus the FSOT. But otherwise, the FSOT is required to become a Foreign Service Officer, and everyone who is in the Foreign Service Officer career will have taken that at some point. And I do see something that Hedda can describe a bit the FSOT. So let me share a link here. You'll want to read more than just this link, but this is the most important one. On our careers.state.gov page, under career paths, you navigate to Foreign Service Officer. There's a lot of information there that talks about the 5 career tracks that both Roz and I were mentioning earlier. Roz, I think you said you were management, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm public diplomacy, but you can choose one of the 5. So we'll talk about the career tracks. It has a little quiz, which career track could be the best fit for me. Take it. And I say that because when you go to apply, if you're interested in this career, you have to select a career track. Whatever you select, you cannot change through the application process. And whatever you select, that's what we're going to hire you to do. So make sure it's an informed, well thought out decision. So you can go online again and see the career tracks, see the quiz. This is one of the links you will also see is the link I just put in the chat, the FSO test information and selection process. Read this very carefully. It goes through all the steps needed in the application process to become a Foreign Service Officer. Don't just read the nice infographics at the top, scroll all the way to the bottom. I mentioned that to candidates that come to me a lot because there's the best information is at the bottom in the tiny print. It will tell you, what the different sections of the FSOT are. It will give a link to a practice test for the FSOT. It will give some information on the other materials that are required that you have to submit, like your resume and personal narratives, these short essays, things like that. So read that very carefully. But essentially, the progression is you register to take the written exam. It's not just simple as, okay, I'll take it, June 5th. You also have to submit additional application materials that include those personal narratives and resume that I sent you. More information on that on the website. So you register to take the FSOT. Everyone who takes the FSOT will move on to the next step, which is the Qualifications Evaluation Panel, where they review holistically everyone's material. So that would be your score from the written test, your essay from the written test, your personal narratives, your resume, the career track you selected. All of that's reviewed holistically. And we're looking for the dimensions. This is also something you'll see on the website. This is really important though. So let me go ahead and put the link to the dimensions, which again can also be found on our website. Here, people ask, what are y'all looking for? It's right here. These 11 dimensions. This is what we're looking for, and this is literally what we're assessing you on throughout the entire application process. These are the qualities that we are looking for, the skills that we're looking for you to demonstrate. So if we are seeing these dimensions in your application materials during the panel review, if we're seeing, the motivation for joining the Foreign Service, which will be one of your essays, then you receive an invitation to the interview, which is the FSOA, which is the Foreign Service Officer Assessment. That is an all-day interview in Washington, D.C. Right now it's in Washington, D.C. and it's in person, but I know they're making moves to try to turn that as quickly as possible into a fully virtual experience for equity and access issues and convenience issues as well. But right now, currently, it's all day in Washington, D.C. If you get invited to that, then you have the opportunity to attend a Saturday information session, and we'll go into way more detail than I have time to go into here. And then if you pass, you have to receive a passing score on the interview. If you pass the interview, you receive what's called a conditional offer of employment. Why is it conditional? Because then you do the medical review. You have to receive a minimum medical qualification. And then you also do the security clearance piece, which is honestly the part that takes the longest. I always tell both students and professionals, start the application process for any foreign service career, specialist or generalist, at least 1 year out from when you actually want to be hired. And again, that's not that the written test or the interview take that long, but the security clearance can take some time. Now, I don't know everybody's life. Everybody's lived a different life. And so I can't tell you, how long the security clearance will take. Maybe it's 9 months for some people, a year and a half for others, it just depends on how you've lived. But it's the security clearance that will take the longest piece. Let me stop there because I can go into a lot more detail, but let me leave room for other questions.
Thank you, Antoinette. I think, Ross, someone heard you mention finance, and all of a sudden there are lots of finance questions that we're dealing with. We've got a recent graduate who's asking, what can I do to position myself for a top graduate program and career in international affairs? I think this both goes into finance, but I think this is also probably a good opportunity to share, how folks can prepare themselves for these types of career or for graduate schools in general.
I also saw another question around being a graduating senior and preparing yourself. So I think it's a whole theme. But I will say my graduate school, I went to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, which is definitely, I would say, a feeder school into foreign service or careers in international development, international diplomacy. I, at 25, was one of the youngest people in my class. And I will say that a lot of individuals, especially at the Fletcher School, were much older, had been working for a few years and had come back to school. And I know that's not true of all of the APSIA schools, the Association of Professional Schools and International Affairs. But I will say that even having a few years out from undergrad was really helpful for me to have a little bit more perspective, to be able to narrate a little bit more what I was interested in doing and why. Especially as Antoinette mentioned, you pick your cone, and you're stuck with it. So, I loved my cone. I originally thought I was going to be economics coned. Thought that what I would do. I studied economics and mathematics, did a couple of internships, loved management. I loved, managing an embassy, managing a consulate, really figuring out how to make the whole ship run was incredibly entertaining for me. So, having a little bit of time and space to figure out what you want to do can be really, really beneficial.
And I would say, if you wanted me to also touch on this, how can you prepare so State Department careers anyway, that's what I can speak to. The dimensions are going to be really key. So that link that I put in the chat, that's what we're looking for. That said, there's no specific roadmap for that. You don't have to have a certain kind of degree. You don't have to do a foreign policy internship. You don't have to do a study abroad. You can build skills in those areas. And if you take a look at the dimensions, it's things like judgment and teamwork and negotiation and, you know, communication. These are really critical skills for probably, I think, any job and for life in working, you know, with others. And so what I always tell folks who ask me, what can I do to prepare? Gain experience, whatever that experience looks like, depending on what your interests and passions are. So you know, you have your coursework, of course, as one option, but then you have volunteer, community experience. You can do extracurricular things, your you know, your full-time, your part-time work. You could do a study abroad, but you don't. There isn't XYZ thing you have to do, because all of us as Foreign Service officers come from all kinds of backgrounds. I mean, I have another colleague, many colleagues who are former lawyers, former journalists, former military, who are chemical engineering majors, who were dance majors, who are, you know, you can do anything. You can come from any background, but get experience because you want to be able to speak to how you've demonstrated those dimensions. So get experience that helps you build the skills in those dimensions. And by experience, do whatever it is you enjoy, you love, you find interesting, because you'll probably perform better at it too, and then can have you know, people speak to that experience and just a more of a wealth of experience in that particular area, but gain some kind of experience that will help you develop those dimensions that I put in the chat earlier. And I see a question here. Let me put in the chat one more time, a link to how can you connect with your diplomat in residence, because we each cover different regions. So I do not cover all of the United States, and I would probably never be done checking email if I did that. I just cover my region, which is the Southwest. But let me put in the link here. This is the link to how you can find your diplomat in residence who covers your region. So if you're in Arizona, Nevada, or New Mexico, you can reach out to me through that link. But otherwise, you can find the state that you're in and send a message to the diplomat in residence who covers your region to talk about careers, internships, fellowships, etc.
We have a few minutes left, so I think we're just going to keep going in responding to the questions. There is a question around how can I transition from the finance startup industry to international affairs? I think we can both guess who that question is for.
Well, so there are a lot of transferable skills between both, actually. I've actually spoken to some foreign service officers that have transferred to startups, and then people that have transferred from startups to the foreign service. So that tells me that the skills, and as Antoinette keeps mentioning, those 11 dimensions, you experience so much of them in the startup industry. And I've been at startups. They're fast paced. You have to be flexible. You have to be both collaborative, but also able to give presentations. You know, I've had situations in startups where you're working on a project in one day and then presenting to investors the next, and then the next day you're on the assembly line trying to fix whatever QA issue is now happening with the gadget that you're designing. So being able to tell that narrative, especially in the foreign service exams and in the essays, you will be able to show through your experience that you actually have all of these dimensions and have proven them, you know, in the startup industry. As Antoinette keeps mentioning, it's not about a particular career path. It's not about a particular field of study, but rather, you know, what you bring skill-wise into the job.
What she said.
I think there's a question about security clearance. I just thought that I chuckled a little. Someone said it's a top secret. So could you share something about security clearance?
Yeah, so for the internships, it's a lower level of clearance. Most times, almost the intern is working in a particular area, but that's a lower level. It could be public trust or maybe at the highest secret. For the careers, you will have to go through a security investigation to get your top secret clearance, which is a little more intense. Yes, they will reach out to people who know you, people you went to school with, people who you traveled with. So prepare yourself and your folks for that.
They will contact neighbors that you had 10 years ago who might not remember you.
There are some questions coming in the chat about having diplomacy adjacent role. Someone talked about, you know, what are the sort of similarities between they're trying to pick between law and diplomacy. Someone else talks about, can I work in a health adjacent diploma role? So I think folks are thinking about transferable skills. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I will just say, oh, sorry, I'll just say for our careers anyway, you just go to careers.state.gov, you'll see the Foreign Service Officer track and the 5 career tracks, read about that, see if that's relevant for you, or you'll see the Foreign Specialist one, some of which are related to finance, financial management, some of which are related to the health field. So you just got to look at the opportunities and see what you might be eligible for.
And as somebody that went to a graduate school on law and diplomacy, they're very tightly intertwined. And so many of my friends have legal backgrounds that went into the foreign service. So I think you could honestly, they're very related.
I think maybe anything else you all would like to share that sort of comes to mind in terms of how folks ought to prepare for a career in foreign service. I think this would be a good time to sort of help us, wrap up our time together. I think things, concrete things folks can take away with them as they're thinking about, these internships, and potentially making career moves or career decisions, even based on some of the folks we have in the chat. So please feel free to take it away.
Think on this for a second. Roz, do you want to start?
Okay. I mean, kind of what I said earlier, find any and all ways to get experience, and you can get experience in a variety of different ways. You can volunteer for a local nonprofit. You can get an internship. Everybody's situation is different, obviously. So, I can't say that there's one path. I can talk about what my path was, but I have so many colleagues and friends who went a variety of different ways. Even in my A100 class, which is our orientation class, our ages ranged from, I think, 22 to there was someone that was 55 in our class. And we had all manner of disciplines from, as Antoinette mentioned, chemical engineering, industrial engineering. We had somebody that was a childhood actor and had decided to come back and work in public service. You have me, who has kind of a more traditional approach because I went to a foreign affairs graduate program. But we all were diverse, and that's the point that the diplomatic service is really trying to achieve, is that you represent the entirety of America, and that as everyone goes abroad, it's supposed to represent the American experience, which is a really wide and vast one.
I think that's exactly it on the tip. Just was sort of on the tips is application, gain experience. For us, it would be experience relevant to those 11 dimensions. But of course, as Roz mentioned, those are really just life skills that you can get from any number of careers. I think what I would say more is maybe a piece of advice, and that would be, don't count yourself out because you think you don't have the right career, you think you don't have the right background, you think you didn't go to the right school, you think you don't look a certain way, you're not from a certain part of the US or whatever. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? We are looking for everyone. We're looking for a range of experience, a range of perspectives, a range of backgrounds to help us solve global challenges. There is no shortage, unfortunately, of global challenges. You just have to pick up the newspaper any day and you can see at least a dozen things that we're working on at any given time, if not more. And so to help us solve those challenges, we really need people from a variety of backgrounds, and we need to be true to our work of representing America abroad in all that America is. So mine would just be more advice. Don't discount yourself because, again, you think you don't come from whatever X, Y, or Z background or pedigree or educational experience or professional experiences. I showed before, we're looking for all kinds of professional and academic experience and all kinds of personal backgrounds and perspectives. So if you think it could be the career for you, career in diplomacy, go for it. Shoot your shot.
Thank you so much, Antoinette and Roz, for being with us today. Roz, I feel like you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just going to plug the internships are a great way to test it out too.
I love it. Kind kind of as a last question, I'd love to ask you maybe a choose your own adventure question. I got two here that kind of came up to mind for me as I watched the webinar today, and I just want to thank you again for being here with us to share this amazing information. I guess what were maybe some of the unforeseen challenges or rewards of foreign service? And then also, I'm really interested in knowing how long the State Department gave you to learn a new language fast before they sent you out on tour, and what that prep is like.
Well, also for the two languages that the State Department taught me, which were both Romance languages, that training for Romance languages is typically 6 months. But it can be 2 years for Arabic and Chinese, and then sort of everything in between for languages who have a level of difficulty that's in between those two. But in terms of challenges and rewards, maybe let me start with challenges. When I joined the Foreign Service, I was in my early 20s. My very first assignment was Australia. It's like, awesome, send me to another continent across the world, far away from family and friends. I was like, bye, mom. I was so up for the adventure that I wasn't really thinking about kind of how I was going to stay connected with my loved ones. And then I was off to Brazil, and it was an amazing adventure. It probably wasn't until my 30s that your priorities change as you age, as you experience different things in life. Your priorities change, and as my mom was getting older, as my sister started having kids, as my friends started getting married, a lot of these events, these moments in life that were happening in the United States, I was missing. Because I was overseas and because it was going to be a long flight to get back, or I couldn't take time off or whatever. And so for me, probably that's been the biggest challenge to navigate, is how do I stay present and connected to my loved ones while still in this career? And that's why I've been in the US for a couple of stateside assignments recently, to be able to spend more time with my mom and my siblings and my stateside friends. And that's been really important to me. And then, next I'll go look back overseas again. But that's a challenge. And that's also why I say this diplomatic life, this foreign service life, isn't for everyone. For some people, when you say travel the world, move every couple of years, learn new things, learn new languages, for some, that's amazing. It sounds like, yes, oh my gosh. And that was me, in my early 20s. It all sounded amazing. And for some people, they think, oh my God, that sounds awful. or that sounds scary. Or like, no, it's not for me. And that's also valid, right? You have to know what's important to you and what you're wanting out of your life and your career. So this lifestyle, because it's really more than a career, it's a way of being as a diplomat, is not for everyone. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But then the rewards, the travel, learning the different languages, doing impactful work, knowing that I've made a difference, those have all been huge, and so far have outweighed the cons.
I would echo on the challenges. It's ultimately the reason I left. Many reasons. My husband's career didn't travel with us. And so because of that, it was just becoming really difficult. And when we did finally leave the service and come back to the US, he was essentially starting over in his 30s as an entry-level person in his field, which was just really hard for us. And like I said, one of the big reasons that drove us back to the US. Also, my family. I'm very, very close with my family, and not being able to be near them, not being able to take care of them and my husband's family as well, was just for us ultimately one of the things that made us come back stateside. But I've stayed very close into this work. I worked for an international NGO, and that had me in Uganda and Rwanda not long after I moved back to the US. So obviously that life abroad and that work abroad still sits with me very much. And so it's a really fun career. You change every couple of years. You get to do something new and different. If you're the sort of person that doesn't like that chaos, maybe, the civil service is a great opportunity for you to have kind of a more traditional structure while still having the really interesting components of international work.
Thank you so much, for those candid responses. It's amazing, I think, Antoinette, you said it's a lifestyle, and it sounds like such a rewarding and impactful opportunity and lifestyle. I want to thank Saran so much for putting together today's webinar and for prepping all of this for us. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar to everyone that registered, and also including the link, Antoinette, so everyone can connect with their diplomat in residence. So that, and we'll also be sharing those that registered with you. So if you want to do any other additional outreach to them. But I want to take a moment real quick to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming opportunities that we have with PPIA, and Saran will be circulating these about, but we have a couple of upcoming federal service opportunity webinars. So today marked our first one with the US State Department. On Thursday, February 22nd, we will be having a similar conversation with the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. On February the 29th, we will be having a webinar in conjunction with ProFellow about how do you negotiate your scholarship or fellowship offers when applying to grad school, and even how maybe to negotiate getting off of wait lists. On March 7th, we will have a how-to and best practices for applying using USA Jobs. And then on March 21st, we will be having a webinar about the White House Fellowship Program. And so just want to thank Saran for putting together this amazing webinar series for us. And again, to thank our amazing panelists for being here with us, and for all of you that were able to join us this afternoon. Just want to thank you as well. So I'm going to hand things back over to Saran for any final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much, Esteban. And I would also like to echo Esteban's gratitude to our panelists for working with us, for being great and joining us today. And I will be in touch with links, recordings. I know a lot of questions in the chat about whether or not this is being recorded. It's being recorded right now, and I'm going to stop because we are now done. But yes, it is being recorded, and you will receive the recording, and there are exciting things coming up. So continue following us on social media. I would be remiss as the comms manager if I didn't say that. And then we will be in touch about all of the links I think that were shared here, so that you also know how to keep in touch with Antoinette in the future. Thank you, and I'm gonna slowly allow folks to leave us. And for those who have questions for me, I think I'm just gonna stay behind. But I will stop officially recording our webinar because it is now over. But thank you for being here.